Good afternoon, everyone. And today we would like to concentrate on concurrency control. The concurrency control. Yeah, very good afternoon to everyone. So we would like to consider what are the different problems caused by concurrency control. And before going to take what are the problems, what is concurrency and how the concurrency will be taken into consideration by any kind of transaction. Let us have a look here. Let us discuss each and every point. Then we'll come up to the problems which are being pertained by the concurrency. We would like to have a look, clear look about all these things here. So the concurrency control, what do you mean by concurrency? Before going to take that one, what do you mean by concurrency? Here it is. Concurrency does means if number of transactions which are being executed at parallel, number of transactions which are being executed at parallel, then there might have some kind of problems while it is being execution. So the parallel execution of transactions will be known as the concurrency. Okay, concurrent execution. Concurrent execution in the sense, so parallel execution of several number of transactions within one particular system. Then that is called as concurrency. And while several number of transactions are being executed, then so-called problems will be gets arised. What are the problems? Let us have a look here. Okay, so there might have some uncontrolled or unrestricted manner. So there might not have any control to execute any kind of set of transactions out there. Then we have many number of problems, as much as many problems are occurred here. So those problems, out of those problems, the first and foremost problem will be the temporary update or dirty read. Temporary update or dirty read. What does it mean? What exactly it could be? So the temporary update is always specifies two transactions are executing at a parallel. One transaction will be, so after some execution of the transaction, it has been failed. Before going to fail, the second transaction will be gets commit on the same kind of item. Then such kind of things are called as the dirty read. So let us take explanation. So by taking some transaction, 2 or 3 transactions here. So let us consider all these things into consideration here. Let us take this transaction. One will be seems like this. So it could be read an item, and then item will be gets modified. A will be read and A will be modified by -10, and read write that particular item onto the temporary location. Okay, onto the temporary location, and then read one more item and can be perform some kind of operation. I mean +50 and write back onto the specific so item back, and then you have to make this particular transaction permanent. You need to understand one point here. The point is when any transaction is being executed, this transaction must be executed at a local machine. Okay, so at local machine only. It is not supposed to be done at so server. Even then, it could be done at server. So there are also some specifications to be understand. So let us consider this is the server. For example, this could be the server. So a user can be connected to this particular server. User might have his own so local area at server. Okay, local buffer at server. Whatever the modifications you did, everything will happen within this particular area. And if you connect one more user with this particular server, so he also does have his own local area, and everything will be done here itself. And the actual database will be somewhere else, which is not equal to the places or the buffers which is being allocated by that particular users. So this is the transaction 1 buffer, and this is the transaction 2 buffer, and this is actual database. Actual, the database will be seen like this. So here, all tables and all objects of that particular database will be available at this place here. Okay, And if any modification will be done by you, you have to read something and the modification will be done by you. Those will be took place in respective local areas of the users here. That is what you need to remember, and that is what you need to understand also. Because while talking something about transactions, it's very important to understand the local buffer and the global database. Database will be always global, and whatever the operations you could perform, everything will be done at a local buffer area only. Okay. So now let us consider this particular operation, transaction T1 operation will be took account A, for example, it is not a really account. So for example, account A has been read and 10 rupees has been deducted, and return back onto the specific local buffer area, and account B has been read and balance will be updated to 50 rupees and have to return the same onto the local buffer. After commit will be gets happen, then whatever the local buffer operations, they will be placed into database, which will be the permanent storage for all kinds of objects. And a transaction T2 will be seen in such a way. So what the transaction T will be done here in the sense, so it has been read the same account or same value from the database again, same database again, and it can be increase the value of A, that particular balance or whatever it may be, A by 0.5 percentage, and then return back that particular thing here, then operated commit here. Okay. So this is the actual. These are the two different types of transactions which are there. Then while executing the transactions, when dirty read will be gets occurred, when dirty read will be gets occurred. So dirty read will be gets occurred when any one of the transactions will be gets failed. Any one of the transactions will be gets failed before commit its value. You please underline this particular statement. Dirty read will be gets occurred. Otherwise, temporary update operation temporary update problem will be gets occurred. Any one of the transactions which will be failed before its commit or before save the modifications permanent. Okay. So one transaction will be fails in the sense second transaction will be, so obviously it could be commits its value. So when this situation could be there, then obviously one side of read will be called as dirty read. Let me explain by taking the timeline. Here. So look at this transaction T1. So it does read. Three instructions of each and every transaction is being executed. After the three instructions have been executed, and second transaction will be interleaved. Otherwise, the second transaction will be, so first transaction will be preempted, and then the second transaction is going to be executed again 3 instructions, and then followed by second transaction will be preempted, followed by third, and so on and so forth. If this is the situation where exactly it could be existed. After execution of third instruction, so transaction T2 will be interleaved in the sense transaction T1 will be preempted, it will be sent out from the execution, and the transaction T2 will be sent in, and it is going to be executed, then followed by transaction T1 will be continued. Some situation or scenario will be seen in such a way, for example, scenario could be seen in such a way, then how the dirty read will be gets occurred. Let us have a look here. So initially, so before going to talk this particular scenario, so the value of A will be, for example, 100. For example, it could be 100. Okay. Transaction T1 has read the particular value from the database. It has been stored in a global area, not at local area. This has been stored at the global database. And if you read this item, then the read operation will be done to take this particular value and can be placed in the local buffer of so-called transaction. Okay, and this value has been read by transaction T1. So transaction T1's value will be A's value of transaction T1 at transaction T1 will be equal to 100, and A will be modified. Yes, A has been modified by minus 10. So then write item. So this write item will be write the data onto the item. So in local buffer only, obviously it could be modified with 90. It could be modified with 90. Now transaction T2 will be read the specific value, and this value could be, this is always, transaction T2 will be always read the data from local buffer only. As far as the local buffer of transaction T1, it could be seems 90, so it has been read. So here A will be equal to 90 here. So then so this value could be updated by 0.5, that is 90 plus 4.5, I think 45. Yes, it is 45. 90 plus 135. So it has been modified with 135. And write item, so it has been written onto the local buffer. And this commit has been operated. Obviously, if you operate this particular commit, so then immediately this local buffer value can be placed onto the global area so that it is 135. 135. Okay. Now, for some reason, so considering that it could not be happen continuously, but some reason to explain the dirty read problem, for some reason, yes, here, so at a transaction T1 at this particular place or at this particular place, so-called transaction has been failed. Okay, so so-called transaction has been failed. Since a failure could be happen, already we have talked some. We had a small discussion on the transaction log. Because of transaction log, if any transaction will be gets failed in the sense, obviously this entire transaction what was happened so far, that will be rolled back in the sense whatever the operations it could be done, everything will be rolled back. I mean A equal to A minus 10, that is actually the 90 plus 10, because it is rolling back in the sense minus will be converted into plus. Again A will be equal to 100, and then operation will be, so again it is being continued. Okay, again it is being continued because of failure. If failure couldn't be occurred, there is no dirty read problem. If failure will be gets occurred, obviously based on the transaction loss, the total entire transaction will be rolled back. After that, so it will be re-executed one more time. So re-executed in the sense, before going to re-execute the same kind of a transaction, it must not be read the data from, so global database. It is already having its own value, that is A equal to 100. It's already having its own value, so that is 100, and can perform one more time, and then it could be perform all these operations here. Now at this place, because of transaction 1 has been failed, so the value which has been read by this particular transaction T2 will be called as a dirty read. This is called as a dirty read kind of value, and this value cannot be so proper value. It is an improper value. If the value can be read by this particular transaction T2 from the global area, yes, it is okay, but it is not read the data from the global area. Rather than from global area, it has been read the data from the local buffer. Since it is a local buffer, already transaction T1 has been modified something, and so transaction T2 has taken that particular value and can be performed some operation by transaction T2, and before committing the value of T1, T2 has been committed. T2 has been, so make its operations permanent. Obviously, so the failure was occurred at this particular place. So therefore, this read will be called as the dirty read. Let me give you a fair example, a real-time example. So let me give one particular example. So normally in examination, people will be, so the person who is not, study but properly based on that particular examination, normally he is looking forward to get some data from the other people in the sense, some copying, some cheating, some kind of cheating was trying to do some kind of cheating here. So one person X and one person Y will be there. and he got one particular question from Y, the question from Y, and he was copied entirely. Whatever he wrote X, he's also written X. He wrote some XYZ, he's also written XYZ, and so on and so forth. And after that, so after question has been written by X, and he was submitted to teacher. He was immediately submitted to teacher, and he wasn't to submit the teacher immediately. So he was submitted and he went away. Now, Y has been made some more modifications to the same question. The answer will be modified some more. Then after doing these kind of modifications, he was submitted to the teacher here. After announcing the results, so X will be surprised that he got more marks to that question, where X has been got less marks. So what is the reason in the sense? So X has been submitted the paper before Y, because Y is the actual person, and he was copied person. X was submitted the paper to the teacher before Y. After went away of this particular X, and he was added some more stuff to that particular answer, and he got more and more marks. Okay, so this was the situation. Of course, it is here you could not find any failure. Here you could not find any failure, but this could be the situation. Some addition was made by Y so that he got very good marks when compared to X. So that is the scenario where exactly you need to understand while dirty read will be taken into consideration. So simply speaking, before going to commit one transaction, it must be failed, then dirty read problem will be gets occurred. Okay, so that is the point you need to understand while talking something about a dirty read here. Then followed by lost update problem. Now it is also seems as a dirty read only, but minute changes. So here, what exactly you are supposed to consider when lost update problem here in the sense. So the updation was done by one transaction will be overwritten by another transaction. The updation was done by one transaction. Yes, updation was done by one transaction that has been overwritten by another transaction. That such kind of problem is called as the lost update problem. How this could be? Same transaction. Let me take the same transaction again. But now, so I'd like to consider two transactions are being, two instructions of, so each transaction is being executed in a particular order. So this could be the situation where exactly it could be occurred. So after second instruction of transaction T1, so it is preempted and it is interleaved by T2. After this one, it will be come back to transaction T1 again, and in this way, the execution is being happened here. For example, so this is the situation. Now, considering that both values, both the transactions are taking the value from global area only. So considering in this particular scenario, so both the values have been taken the values from global area only, global database only. A will be equal to 100. Yes, she has been read. So 100 here at the transaction T1, and at the transaction T1, so the value of so A has been modified by -10. So it could be modified by 90. Of course, written also be written. Okay, one moment, please. Modification was happened, but it is not written onto the A here, because the right item has been occurred after some time. And then in this particular scenario, it has been, A value has been read here. The value which is been read here is 100 again at the transaction T2. Okay. Then whatever the modification, so here it can be done, that is 100 plus 50%, that is 150. It has been taken 150. It has been taken 90 here. It has been taken 90. Okay, next statement is, because of the statement it is 90. And read B, for example, B value will be equal to some 5. It doesn't matter for us whatever the value may be, because we are talking about only A. So read B, so it has been taken some 5. After that it has been, so come to transaction T2, and now, so 150 will be updated. So at a local area of a transaction T2 and then committed. Since it is committed, so the data has been, whatever the modification by transaction T2, so it has been made permanent. 100 will be so overwritten with so 150, which is done by transaction T2. It has been done by transaction T2. Now, yes, so transaction T2 is really completed. And come back to this area. B will be equal to B plus 50. That is going to be so modified with so 50 plus 5, 55. Afterwards, it has been written. Now, commit operation will be done here. Commit operation in the sense, two items are going to be written onto the database. Number one is 90 of A. Number two is 55 of B. Yes, 55 of B, it has been done. There is no problem because another transaction has not been read and make any modifications on B. But try to understand. So A has been so overwritten by transaction T1 with 90 actually. Okay, with 90. It has been done by transaction T1. Look at this, whatever the modification which was done by T2 has overwritten. Actually, it is not the case. It is not the case. For example, this particular scenario will be done something like this. So transaction T1 will be followed by transaction T2. For example, it could be done here in the sense. So transaction T1, yes value will be 90. It will be 90. After completion of transaction T2, transaction T1, so 90 will be read by transaction T2. 90 plus 90 into 0.5, that is 135. Our actual value, which is required value, consistent value, which is available with this one is 135. But you could see, so transaction T2 has been updated with 150. That has been overwritten by transaction T1, so which is 90. Both values are inconsistent values. Both values are inconsistent values. So therefore, so this last update will be always it could be done overwritten. One transaction's updation will be overwritten by another transaction. Such kind of problems will be called as the lost update problems. Okay. So transaction T2 has been updated some value that has been overwritten by transaction T1. So that is the problem here. Okay. So next situation, inconsistent retrievals. Yeah, it is confusing in the sense. So let me come again this particular problem. Yes, it is a bit confusing only. So look at this. Look at this. Yeah. So yes. I'm coming again. So look at this. So this is the global area. In this particular global area in the sense A will be equal to so 100. A value will be equal to 100 and B value equal to 5 as far as the previous explanation which we have taken. And the same transactions, the scenario here is, so two instructions of each transaction will be interleaved. Interleaved in the sense they have been so preempted and goes with the second transaction. In second transaction, two operations will be done, then it is preempted. First transaction will be took place and so on and so forth. So after completion of this, so it will be comes to transaction T2. After this one, T2, T1, and after this one, T2, and so on and so forth. Like this, it is being executed. Now, one more scenario you need to consider when any transaction is getting the value of any item, that value could be taken from only global area, that is global database, not from the local buffer. So that is the scenario you need to consider. Okay, it has been taken the particular values, it has been read the particular values from global database only, I mean actual database only. It is not supposed to read the data from local buffer. So based on this particular scenario, at transaction T1, A value has been, because it has been read first, so that it has been taken this particular value, which is 100 has been taken from the global database. And So because of this particular statement, yes, it has been modified. This modification will be done. So 90, and it has not been written onto the local buffer of transaction T1. It will be there with A only. So in local buffer, it has not been written. Now, after completion of the second instruction of T1, so it is interleaved, otherwise it is preempted and come to second transaction for execution. Now here, it is also taken the value from global location only. That is, it's been taken the value from global location, which will be equal to 100 again. Okay. Now the value has been modified with A equal to A plus A plus of A into 0.5. So it could be modified with 100 plus 100 into 0.5, that is 150. Okay, 150, which is been modified. Now a turn will be comes to T1, and T1 it has been written onto the local buffer of T1 here. So previously it has been A, which is 100 at local buffer, and this is a local variable, and this is the local buffer. Let us consider this is a buffer, and this is a local variable here also. So this is local. While I'm trying to draw any kind of the box, that will be considered as local buffer. So this is local variable. Okay, here it is 100. So 100 has not been updated so far by transaction T2 at local buffer. Here also not done. Now because of write item, yes, it has been modified from right away from 100 to 90. Okay. Then again, so transaction T2 has been done some kind of operation by B. So B has been read, which is 5 from the global location, and then come to transaction T2. Write item A, local area for transaction T2 has been written or overwritten by 150. Now, so far, up to this particular statement of transaction T2, everything has been done at local buffer of transaction 2. Now, you have operated, transaction 2 has been operated commit. Because of commit, so whatever the value which is possessed by the local buffer of transaction 2 with A, it has been made permanent. Permanent in the sense, so which is 150. This 150 was done by transaction T2 because transaction T2 has been operated commit before transaction T1. Okay, transaction T2 has been operated commit before transaction T1, so that this value can be updated at a global area by transaction T2. Now B equal to turn will becomes to transaction T1, B equal to B plus 50. Of course, it has been where it is B equal to previously it is 5. And it has been B plus 50, that is 55, and it has been written onto the global local area. That local area is so it has been done as 55. Now commit will be operated. Okay, after A and after B, both the modifications will be done. Then commit was operated. Since commit was operated, so these modifications at A it is 90, at B it is 55. These values will be made permanent by the transaction T1. So therefore, your values will be seems like this. This has been overwritten. Whatever the update which was done by transaction T2 has been overwritten by 90, and of course there is no problem with B here. That is 55. So here this particular 150 was overwritten by 90. If you've done this particular operation in serial order in the sense transaction T1 followed by transaction T2, entire transaction T1 followed by transaction T2. This is serial order. For example, all these instructions of transaction T1 has been completed, then transaction T2 will be gets taken into consideration for execution. Then the value of A will be, here it is 90. After completion of a transaction T1, the value of A will be 90, and this 90 will be read by transaction T2 because all instructions of a transaction T1 has been completed. Then transaction T2 will be get started here. So that is the case. If that is the case, the 90 will be read by this one, 135 will be the answer. 135 will be the answer. If that is not the case, so transaction T2 followed by transaction T1, for example. Now transaction T2 in the sense, so all these four instructions will be completed. Then 100 will be read by this one. So finally, the value of A will be 150. 150 minus 10, that is 140. So these are the two different values which are consistent values. Either this one or this one. Either this one or this one are consistent values based on the transaction T1 followed by transaction T2. Otherwise, transaction T2 followed by transaction T1. These are the, either it is 135 or it is 140 are the consistent values. But here you could see, so first updation is 150, second updation is 90. Both are inconsistent values. Both are not supposed to be taken into consideration. So such kind of problem will be called as lost update problem. This kind of problem will be called as the lost update problem. Okay. So why I have taken this particular scenario here in the sense to understand in better way. To understand in better way, I have taken this one. Okay. Now, coming to next, inconsistent retrieval. Where this could be gets occurred, in which scenario it is being occurred here in the sense, already we have learned something about aggregate functions. Aggregate in the sense sum, count, and then minimum, maximum, and so on and so forth. All those functions have been learned by us. So here one transaction will be done, so cumulative sum, and the second transaction will be done, so updation. First transaction will be done cumulative sum, and the second transaction will be done updation on the same items. Okay, items are same. Let me explain. Inconsistent retrievals from the problem will be also called as unrepeatable route. Unrepeatable read. How this could be evaluated? Let us have a look here. So on reading of this particular data, you could not understand. However, I would like to go ahead with this one here only. So one transaction will be calculates the sum, where second transaction will be do some kind of updating of data. Okay, if this is the scenario, then inconsistent retrieval, otherwise unrepeatable read will be gets occurred. Otherwise, there is no such kind of problem, while concurrency will be done by the database management system servers. Okay, so you could see. I'll come back to this particular point again. You could see. So here we have three accounts: account A, account B, account C of same bank. And account A has 200 balance, account B has 250 as balance, account C has 150 as balance. So what exactly transaction T1 can be done here is balance of A plus balance of B plus balance of C. Hope that you understood. Balance of A plus balance of B plus balance of C. So after taking this particular thing, we must have 600 rupees as a final outcome after adding all these things. But transaction T2 has done some kind of updation. Let us see what does that. Let us see what kind of updation it could be done. Transaction T1. So look at this. I'll reveal everything. Then you could understand very easily. Okay, look at this. So a transaction T1 has get started. So there is a local variable that is sum equal to 0. So balance of account A has been read and it has been added. So now sum equal to the value of sum equal to 200 at this particular situation. Then the balance of Y, account B also read and placed into Y. So Y has been added to sum. So therefore it is 450 at this particular situation. This is 450. So after completion of the sum operation, then interleaving could be gets happened here. Now here what it could be done here in the sense some updations have been took place. So account C has been read here, and that account will be updated with minus 50 so that it could be considered as 100. Now it is 100. Of course, I am trying to specify because of commit will be here, so directly I am updating at a global area. Okay, so balance of A has been read and it has been updated with plus 50, so that it could be considered as so 250. Okay, then commit was there. Yes, so both have been updated at the global area. Now interleaved by transaction T2. So Z will be read account C sum. Account C balance. So account C balance at this moment is 100 and sum equal to sum plus Z. So it will be so 550. 450 plus 100 will be 550. You lost the cumulative sum. You lost some cumulative sum. What did you lost here in the sense? Because of this particular update, some value has been lost from the actual sum here. You please observe this one. Before going to start everything, actual values will be 200 plus 250, 450 plus 150. Total, our expected value, expected sum will be 600, but we got only 550 here. So this is what the unrepeatable read. Okay, you never repeat the read again. You never repeat the read again. So you could not read so this particular statement one more time. You could not execute this particular statement one more time. It is not possible. Okay, because already commit statement state will be there with the transaction T2. So therefore modifications will happen. Some value has been missed here. So that kind of the problem will be called as unrepeatable read. Okay. So these are the three problems where exactly which concurrency will be push that particular state of your database from consistent state to inconsistent state. Okay, before going to start this particular operation of this example, so balance of A, balance of B, balance of C, of course everything balances are okay, there is no problem. One modification, one updation was done. Actually after updation, C's account must be 100 only and A's account must be 250 only. So up to that particular point, that is okay, that is consistent state only. But what is my job here? My job is I'd like to calculate the sum of all balances of different accounts. So here I lost 50 rupees before going to take this particular scenario here. So these are the three different kinds of problems where exactly it could be occurred when concurrent execution will be done by the databases. So in future, what exactly we are trying to perform here? How could you avoid all this? How could you avoid all this? So we have last updates, incomplete data, inconsistent retrieval. Okay, inconsistent retrieval in the sense just before we have seen unrepeatable read, that is called as inconsistent retrieval. All these things have been completed here. Tomorrow we would like to go ahead with schedulers. Okay, tomorrow we'd like to go ahead with the schedulers and slowly we'll complete everything here. 5:30. Attendance. Okay. So this is what the class today. I'll upload this one to YouTube and I'll forward the link. So if you have any questions, you please go through the video one more time. Still you are having some questions, let me you please call to me up to 5:30. I will available up to 5:30. Okay. Thank you.